She did not love you. She observed you, studied every reaction, memorized every weakness, and turned your empathy into her control panel. She knew exactly what story to tell you, the one that made you lean in, want to save her, protect her, fight for her. But it was never about connection. It was always about control. That moment she cried in your arms, that moment she said, "You're the only one I trust," that was not love. That was the setup. She built the illusion of intimacy, fast, intense, emotional. So you would skip logic, so you would bypass your gut, so you would become addicted to the very thing destroying you. What you thought was vulnerability was manufactured weakness. What you thought was trust was strategic storytelling. What you thought was love was a psychological prison made of your own guilt and hope. And by the time you realized something was wrong, it was too late, because you were not just in love with her, you were in love with fixing her. This is not just about heartbreak. This is about covert psychological warfare, disguised as affection, and it's more common than you think. In this video, we are not just exposing the tactics of a covert narcissist. We are breaking the spell she cast on your mind. If any part of that felt uncomfortably familiar, you are not alone. What you have experienced is not weakness. It's psychological manipulation crafted to look like love. And once you learn to see it, you can never unsee it. So stay with me, because in the next few minutes, we will expose every hidden tactic, every silent weapon, and every reason why the pain you carry was never your fault. If you value emotional truth and want to understand the dark side of human connection, subscribe now and let's rebuild your strength together. You were never taught to see her coming, because society only warns you about the loud ones, the arrogant, the flamboyant, the obviously toxic, the ones who shout, who demand, who explode. But the most dangerous kind does not raise her voice. She whispers. She enters your life looking like everything you ever wanted, soft, thoughtful, fragile. She does not dominate a room. She disarms it. She does not talk over you. She listens so deeply you feel seen in a way you have never felt before. She does not take power by force. She makes you give it to her willingly. Because this is not the narcissist you read about in self-help blogs. This is the one who hides behind mirrored needs, the woman who reflects your deepest desires back at you like a dream. She senses you crave peace, so she becomes gentle. You long for emotional depth. Suddenly she opens up about her wounds. You're tired of surface-level love. She paints herself as different. She studies you like a mirror, then becomes what you are most desperate to find. But it's not real. It's not who she is. It's who you needed her to be. That's how covert manipulation works. Not by pushing against your boundaries, but by sliding beneath them. She bypasses logic, skips red flags, and goes straight to the emotional center of your being. Because when someone bleeds in front of you, you don't question them. You rescue them. And once you become the rescuer, you stop realizing you are being robbed. That early rush you felt, that deep emotional high, was not love. It was psychological bait, a vulnerability trap designed to feel sacred, while binding you to someone who never intended to heal, only to feed. And by the time you begin to question her, you have already convinced yourself she's just misunderstood. She's been through too much. She just needs time. But it's not her wounds you are protecting. It's your belief that what you felt was real. Weapon 1, manufactured vulnerability. She did not wait weeks to open up. It started early, maybe the second or third conversation, tears in her voice, a trembling confession, a story of betrayal, of childhood wounds, of the monsters who hurt her. And in that moment, your heart did something dangerous. It opened, not because she asked, but because she bled. This is how manufactured vulnerability works. It's not the slow unfolding of real emotional intimacy. It's a calculated shortcut, one that skips trust, time, and shared experience, and instead forces closeness through pain. She didn't tell you those things because she trusted you. She told you because she wanted you hooked. Most people wait to share their deepest scars, but she knows that when she bleeds early, you'll rush to bandage her, and in doing so, you'll lower your defenses. You'll stop analyzing, stop observing, and start protecting. You thought you were being let in, you weren't. You were being recruited to heal her, to prove you're different from the others, to earn the version of her that only shows up in glimpses, sweet, broken, needing you. But what you didn't see was the shift. You weren't falling in love. You were stepping into a role, the wounded healer. Carl Jung wrote about this archetype, the one who tries to heal others to avoid facing his own pain, the one who believes he's saving someone, but is actually losing himself. And the covert narcissist knows how to play this role perfectly. She hands you her wounds, not to heal, but to own. Now, when she lashes out, it's because of her trauma. When she disappears emotionally, it's her past. When she crosses lines, it's your job to understand. You're not just dating her, you're justifying her. And here's the cruelty. None of the stories may be lies. That's what makes it more convincing. They may be real, but their purpose is not connection. It's leverage. You are not building a relationship. You are inheriting a case file, one that absolves her of accountability and makes you responsible for every emotional explosion that follows. This is not a vulnerability. It's weaponized storytelling, and it's only the beginning. Weapon 2. Emotional hostage tactics. At first, her emotions felt raw, unfiltered, human. You told yourself she was just sensitive, maybe even beautifully so. But soon that sensitivity started turning your life into a minefield. You never knew what would set her off. A glance too long at your phone, a delayed reply, a change in tone. Suddenly, she's crying, or silent, or trembling with disappointment. At first, you rush to fix it, because you're a good man, because that's what you were taught to do. Protect her, soothe her, take responsibility. But this wasn't a normal emotional dynamic. This was emotional hostage-taking, and whether you realized it or not, you were already negotiating with a psychological terrorist, because these weren't reactions, they were tactics. The covert narcissist learns early in life that emotions aren't just expressions, they're tools. A well-timed tear buys forgiveness. A sudden breakdown resets the blame. A quiet withdrawal starves you of affection until you crawl back, even when you've done nothing wrong. You're not in a relationship anymore. You're inside a system where her emotional states determine your behavior, and your peace depends entirely on her approval. So you adapt. You start shrinking yourself. You speak softer. You avoid topics. You predict moods like weather patterns. You become fluent in her emotional language, even when it contradicts itself. And here's the worst part. You begin to believe that you're the problem, because that's the genius of emotional hostage tactics. They flip the frame. If she's upset, you must have done something. If she's distant, you must be failing. If she's cold, you must try harder. But none of it is true, because what you're dealing with isn't love. It's a system of control wrapped in the disguise of emotional intimacy. And the more masculine you are, the more you feel the urge to protect, to fix, to make her happy. The deeper the trap becomes. She doesn't overpower you. She makes you overpower yourself. Her pain becomes your mission. Her moods become your responsibility. Her instability becomes your full-time job. And it's never enough, because no matter how many fires you put out, she'll always light new ones. Not because she wants peace, but because the fire is where she feels powerful. This is how the covert narcissist breaks the strongest men, not by confronting them, but by convincing them that their strength lies in saving her, even if it destroys them in the process. Weapon 3. Gaslighting and reality. Rewriting. She does not scream, she does not debate, she does not even fight fair, because she does not need to. She rewrites reality, one conversation at a time. You say, "But you promised." She says, "I never said that." You recall a moment clearly. She insists it happened differently. And the more certain you are, the more calm and confident she becomes. That's when you feel it, not anger, not confusion. Something worse, doubt. Gaslighting doesn't come with alarms. It comes dressed as reason, as you're overreacting, as you always twist things, as maybe you're just too sensitive. At first, you defend yourself, but slowly, subtly, you start defending her version of you. You stop trusting your instincts. You question your memories. You analyze your tone, your motives, your truth. And what she says begins to matter more than what you feel. This is how identity erosion begins. Not in one big moment, but in thousands of tiny edits. Moments where your reality was rewritten to protect hers. And eventually, you split. There's the version of you that feels, and the version of you that performs. Because real emotions became dangerous, so you adapted. You entered psychological survival mode, nodding to avoid conflict, agreeing to avoid madness, smiling while dying inside. This isn't sensitivity. This is strategic psychological warfare. And Carl Jung warned us about this. He said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." But the covert narcissist doesn't just resist her own shadow, she outsources it. She denies her guilt and makes you carry it. She suppresses her shame and buries you under it. She can't face her darkness, so she paints it onto the people who love her most. You start reacting like her, thinking like her, apologizing for things you didn't even do, because she made you the villain in a story you never agreed to be in. And that's the final stage of gaslighting. You begin to police yourself. You don't just walk on eggshells. You become the one who lays them down. Her silence becomes truth. Her perception becomes law. And your own mind? It becomes the prison she never had to build, because you constructed it for her, brick by brick, lie by lie. Weapon 4, performance addiction. In the beginning, her praise felt like magic, a soft smile after a compliment, the way her eyes lit up when you said the right thing, the sudden warmth after hours of emotional coldness. You started to crave it. You started to need it. But here's the trap. She wasn't giving you love. She was giving you permission to feel worthy. And just like that, you were on stage, auditioning, every day, for the role of good enough. This is performance addiction, the psychological loop where love becomes a reward, not a right, where affection is given sporadically, strategically, just enough to keep you chasing. You become addicted to the highs because the lows feel like punishment, and you'll do anything, say anything, be anything, to get back to that moment when you were finally seen, finally valued. But here's the truth. You were never being seen. You were being evaluated. Her standards shift constantly. What made her smile yesterday earns silence today. What felt like progress becomes failure by morning. She keeps moving the target, because if you ever hit it, the game ends. And she doesn't want love. She wants control. Control disguised as admiration. Control disguised as growth. Control disguised as your desire to be better for her. You start thinking, if I just listen more, if I just improve this, if I just stop making her upset, then maybe she'll love me like she did at the start. But here's the psychological trick. She never did. The approval was bait, and now you're trapped in a loop of self-erasure, not to hurt her, but to win her back. The version of her that only exists in your memory, and only appears when she wants something. She doesn't offer love. She offers glimpses of love, enough to reset your hope, enough to keep you investing. And over time, you don't even realize what's happened. You're not a partner anymore. You're a performer in an invisible audition, trying to earn what should have been given freely. You dress differently, speak differently, even think differently, all to meet standards that change like shadows. And here's the psychological wound that cuts deepest. You start believing that this is what love is supposed to feel like. Hard, unpredictable, earned. But it's not. Love that has to be performed for isn't love. It's control, sugar-coated in validation. And the longer you stay, the more you forget who you were before the performance began. Weapon 5, emotional blackmail economy. You did not just become her partner. You became her emotional butler, her therapist, her crisis manager, her personal pain sponge. But when it came time for her to be there for you, suddenly she was tired, busy, overwhelmed. You learned quickly. Her emotions mattered. Yours were inconvenient. This is the emotional blackmail economy, a system where you give endlessly and she gives strategically, where your emotional labor is expected, but hers is always on hold. She demands you show up fully, listen deeply, support her through every storm, no matter how self-created. But when you're hurt, when you're tired, when you need space or comfort or care, you're too sensitive, you're too dramatic, you're not being supportive enough. And then she says it, if you really love me, you'd... That sentence is a loaded weapon. It doesn't ask. It accuses. It makes your devotion feel conditional, as if love is proven not by truth, but by sacrifice. So you start doing things that go against your values. You break your own boundaries. You silence your own voice, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of being seen as cold, selfish, not enough. But this isn't love. It's emotional extortion. You become so used to carrying her pain that you start feeling guilty for having any of your own. You begin to think your needs are immature. That emotional starvation is actually emotional maturity. That being the bigger person means dying quietly inside. But here's the truth. No one tells you. Love is not supposed to feel like servitude. And needing support doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. The covert narcissist flips the emotional script. She paints herself as self-aware and evolving, while secretly training you to feel ashamed of your own emotions. She doesn't just ignore your pain, she reframes it. When you're sad, you're guilt-tripping. When you're angry, you're abusive. When you go quiet, you're punishing her. When you open up, you're too much. And slowly, you begin to self-abandon. You hide your sadness, bury your frustration, mute your joy, because your emotional truth has been cast as a threat to the relationship. You become emotionally independent, not because you've grown, but because you've given up. And that's the final layer of emotional slavery. You don't just carry her emotional world. You pretend yours doesn't even exist, all while telling yourself, this is what it means to be strong, this is what it takes to love someone broken. But real strength is not staying in a system that erases you. It's recognizing when love has become labor, and choosing to walk out of the emotional prison you were never meant to live in. Weapon 6, competence assassination. She never said you were stupid. She didn't need to. Instead, she asked small questions, offered better ways to do things, made subtle suggestions, wrapped in concern. At first, it felt like help, but over time, it started to feel like permission, because suddenly, you weren't deciding anything on your own. Every choice, no matter how small, became subject to her input. What you wore, how you spoke, the way you handle situations you've handled your whole life. She'd smile gently and say, I'm just trying to help. Or worse, I know you mean well. And those words, laced with quiet doubt, begin to eat away at your identity. You used to feel competent, capable. Now you second-guess your judgment. You hesitate before acting. You seek her opinion, not out of respect, but out of fear of getting it wrong again. This is what I call competence assassination. A slow, calculated erosion of your confidence disguised as emotional partnership. And it doesn't look like control. It looks like care. She positions herself as the one with better insight, better instincts, better emotional awareness. You become the student, forever learning how to be better in her eyes. But the goalposts always move, and with every correction, your masculine identity shrinks. Masculinity isn't just about toughness, it's about agency. Direction, the belief that you can trust your gut and lead your own life. But under her influence, that self-trust rots. You start believing that her way is always superior, that her emotional read is more accurate, that her feedback is truth. So now, you ask before acting. You wait for approval. You check in before decisions, even the ones you used to make on instinct. Not because you want to, but because she's trained you to doubt yourself. And that's how she wins. Not by breaking you loudly, but by convincing you to break yourself quietly. You stop taking risks. You stop standing tall. You stop speaking with certainty. Because the moment you began to seek her approval for who you already were, was the moment she started rewriting your definition of strength. Weapon 7, isolation protocol. She never told you to cut off your friends. She never said you couldn't see your family. She didn't have to. Because every time you did, she made you pay for it emotionally. Maybe she got unusually quiet after you came home. Maybe she sent you a sad text while you were out. Maybe she started a fight the moment you walked through the door. At first, you thought it was coincidence, just emotional timing, but eventually, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Every external connection came with a cost. She'd say things like, "They don't really support us. I just feel like they don't like me." You act different when you're around them. Not threats, just wounds. Not commands, just guilt. This is how isolation begins. Not with control, but with emotional consequences. You start choosing peace over connection, avoiding drama by avoiding people, skipping hangouts, canceling plans. Not because you want to, but because the emotional tax is too high. Over time, she becomes your only source of validation, the only one who gets you, the only one who really understands your heart. And because she's already rewritten your sense of reality, you start believing it. You forget how much you laughed with your friends. You forget the safety you once felt around family. Because those roots were slowly, silently cut away. Not by force, but by framing them as threats to your bond. And once she's your entire emotional world, she no longer has to work to control you. Because the world outside of her feels unfamiliar, unwelcoming, dangerous. You didn't isolate yourself. You were trained to, gently, strategically, repeatedly. And by the time you realize how alone you are, you're already afraid of reaching out. Not just because of her, but because of the shame she installed in you for needing anyone but her. Weapon 8, the guilt machine and hope addiction. She does not ask for repayment. She just keeps a ledger, invisible, but always open. A running total of all the sacrifices she's made for you. Every compromise, every favor, every emotional wound she claims to have endured for your sake. And whenever you bring up your own needs, she flips the ledger open and reads you the debt. After everything I've done for you, you wouldn't even try to understand me. I gave you all of me, and you're still not happy? This is the guilt machine. And once you're inside it, every boundary feels selfish. Every need you express becomes ungrateful. Every attempt to breathe feels like betrayal. What makes it worse is her memory. She forgets everything you gave, everything you sacrificed, all the ways you bent, broke, and bled to keep her stable. But she amplifies every tiny thing she's ever done for you. A compliment from last month, a small favor, a moment of warmth after days of cold silence, now held up like it should cancel all your pain. So, you stop asking, you stop needing, you stop keeping score. But she never does. And here's where the real trap begins. You stay for the highs. The moments when she softens, smiles, holds you. When she seems human again. Those moments feel like heaven because they only arrive after you've walked through hell. This is hope addiction. The psychological loop where your brain latches onto rare rewards and convinces you they're proof that love is still possible. But they're not proof. They're crumbs. And she knows it. Because if she gave you that affection consistently, you'd stop performing. You'd stop chasing. You'd realize you were starving the whole time. So, she rations it. Not out of malice, but because scarcity makes control easier. And that's the most twisted part of all. The thing keeping you here isn't the pain. It's the belief that maybe tomorrow she'll be the woman you saw at the start. But she never was. And she never will be. Because hope isn't love. It's the leash you've been taught to wear. At some point, you stop existing as a person and start functioning as an emotional appliance. Always on, always available, but no longer seen, no longer needed. Just there, to respond, to absorb, to perform. Your needs, they start to feel like threats to the relationship. Every time you express pain, she pulls away. Every time you ask for support, the air tightens. So you adapt. You go silent. You start calling your boundaries selfish. You start believing your feelings are problems to be fixed, not truths to be honored. And this is when the real collapse begins. Not loud, not dramatic, but quiet, subtle, like a soul folding in on itself. You feel guilt for wanting love, confusion about your own reactions, self-hate for not being strong enough to make her happy. But none of it is yours. It was installed, line by line, moment by moment, until your internal compass no longer points to you. Carl Jung called it individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole, becoming yourself. But what happens here is its opposite, a reversal. You aren't becoming more you, you're becoming more of what she needs you to be. And what she needs is not a partner. It's a tool, a function, a mirror that reflects her and nothing else. And by the time you realize you've disappeared, you're not even sure what you looked like before you started fading. You can't fix her, because she was never looking to be healed, only held in control. Her psyche isn't broken. It's built this way, designed to feed on connection, not nurture it, to extract emotion, not share it. And the more you try to help her, the deeper you disappear. That's the hardest truth. Love won't save her, and sacrifice will only destroy you, because your freedom doesn't begin when she changes. It begins when you stop participating. You stop playing the hero. You stop chasing the high. You stop accepting emotional crumbs and calling it connection. This is called emotional sovereignty, the power to feel, think, choose, and heal without waiting for her permission. It means your pain is valid, your needs aren't excessive, and your boundaries aren't flaws. They're the shape of your soul trying to stand again, and you must let it. Because the goal is not to become her rescuer, but to reclaim the warrior inside you that she worked so hard to silence. Not the man who fixed her, but the man who remembered himself, who walked out of the fog, who looked at the wreckage and still chose to rebuild. Because your power was never in fixing her. It was in finally choosing you. The most dangerous part of all this is that it looked like love. It felt intimate. It felt deep. It felt real. But it wasn't love. It was psychological warfare dressed in affection, a carefully crafted illusion designed to confuse, weaken, and bind. And now you see it. That is your strength, because real strength doesn't come from holding on. It comes from having the courage to look clearly at what's been breaking you, and naming it for what it truly is. Carl Jung once said, "The shadow that you refuse to face will rise up and destroy you." But in this case, it wasn't your shadow. It was hers, and she projected it onto you so you would carry the weight she refused to face. Now, it's time to set it down, to reclaim your center, to heal without shame, and to rise, not as a man broken by love, but as one reborn through clarity. If this spoke to something inside you, subscribe, not just for content, but for truth, because your healing started the moment you saw clearly. Now, keep going.